What is up, guys? Hope everybody is having a great day. Today, I wanted to talk about ways that you can really digitize your processes in the workplace. In 2024, one of the things that I've been focusing on is building leverage in my business. And the way that that came across is because I hired my first couple of VAs this year. And the thing about when you hire VAs is that you have to be able to give them a process in order to be able to determine what work they're doing and if they're working efficiently. And so when I started doing that, I've really this past year become ingrained in implementing processes in my business, in my firm. And so I wanted to get on here today and talk about why processes, in my opinion, are important, some stories that I've learned, and ways that you could get started today by creating processes in your business. And so the first thing that I always want to talk about is why processes are important. And the three things that I believe why processes are important is because they allow you to manage activities, they allow you to stick on brand, and then they allow you to focus on culture. And so the first one, when it comes to managing activities, I talked about it on social the other day. One of my clients and friends, Ali Jamal, taught me about this. But if you can manage activities, you can understand the outcomes that you're supposed to get. And that allows you to be able to understand if something is working or not. So, for example, if I have an activity of, let's just say it's old school, and I say I'm going to DM 100 businesses a day, and that results in me getting one client a week. Well, if I create a process and I say, okay, to the VA or to whoever it is in my organization, I say, okay, I need you to DM 100 businesses a day. And I look back and all of a sudden we're not getting one new client a week. The reason that a process is important is because I can analyze and I can see if they're actually DMing the right amount of people, if they're DMing the right messages. And this process allows me to see where the hiccup is and if I need to either change the process or change the person. Another thing is you can, when you create a process, you can track what's going on. And so a great example of this is if you have somebody who is doing videos for you, right? And they say, okay, I'm going to provide you with 10 videos a month. Well, you can track that if you have a process based on the videos getting approved, based on the videos getting uploaded. You know that every time they upload a video to a Dropbox, they notify you. Well, if they've notified you 10 times in the month, you know that they've done what they're supposed to do. If all of a sudden you're like, hey, we're running out of content, and you go back and look at your emails in the last 3 months, they've only emailed you 7 times that a new video is in a Dropbox. Well, the great thing about that is you can track what's going on. That way, if you have to go in a different direction, it allows you to it allows you to have hard facts, right? I think a lot of times what I've learned in business from like people I respect a lot is the fact that it's hard to have a hard conversation with somebody unless you have a paper trail of something, right? So if you just say, hey, I don't think you're working hard, well, somebody will say, well, what makes you say that? And you just say, well, that's just my gut feeling. That doesn't necessarily work, in my opinion, from what I've seen in my experience. It works with some people, but it doesn't always work. But if you say, hey, your job was to get 10 videos this month, in the last 3 months, you've only gotten 6. So we need to figure out, we need to go in a different direction or modify our agreement. Because you have a process in place, you can track that, and that allows you to have either the hard conversations or the easy conversations going forward. And then the last one is, I believe that the more processes you have allow you to focus on culture. Because I think what happens a lot of times as far as culture is when it comes to an organization, and I've seen it in the different industries that I've been a part of. I'm a partner in certain businesses in the health and fitness space. I work with government agencies. I work with churches. And then I have my firm itself. And what I often see is that when people talk about culture, people talk about internal culture, personality, and things of that nature. But what I've often seen, and I would love to hear anybody's thoughts, is that the hardest person to get rid of in an organization, from what I've seen in my experience, is a person who has a great personality, who makes people feel special, who makes people feel welcomed, who's not gossiping about people, who's a happy person, but also isn't performing, right? Because what happens is, if that person you have to get rid of, the hiccup that you run into is it makes people question, well, what is this? What, from what I've seen, it makes people question, say, well, like, if that person got let go, what does that mean for me? What does that mean for me? And like, people start feeling some type of way. And so, going back to the processes, I believe processes allow you to eliminate that, right? Because if you have a process, right, and you have a task for somebody, if they're doing the task, you can focus on the person. But if they're not doing the task, you can focus on getting a different person in place. Like I said, the hardest person that I've seen organizations have trouble letting go of is the person with an electric personality, but the person who's not performing their task in the day to day. But I've also seen that if you don't give that person a process to follow, what happens is they go and try to do their own thing. And if they are an electric person, they're a social person, they're so focused on that aspect that they're not focused on the task at hand. So if you create that process, it allows you to see if that person's able to handle a process. And if they can't even handle a process, it allows you to get somebody different in that role. That way it doesn't make it weird when that person has to be let go or that person has to go on a different route. And so that's what I've seen as far as the benefits of processes in a business. And so how you create those processes, I believe, is relatively simple as far as two apps that you really need. I think that if you have a virtual job, if you have a job that's always on the computer, as far as like graphic design, content creation, and you can create a process, the two apps I would tell you to use are Loom and Asana. I started using Asana when I had to start hiring VAs. And Asana is a project management software, but Asana allows you to create processes at scale. It notifies you when the people who are assigned to that process view the process, and it allows you to type in detail how to do the process from start to finish. Now, what Loom does is Loom allows your screen to be watched while you do a voiceover of how to do a process online. So, for example, the other day, I did a process on how to create long form articles for my personal brand. And so I was doing it, but my thought process was, okay, let me start a Loom video. Once I start a Loom video, from there, what I can do is I can then send it to the VAs and say, hey, I need you to do one of these a week or two of these a week. And I know that it's not going to end up much different from the way I did it because they have to follow a process. I guess the light just went up behind me, but it's okay. And so what this allows you to do is this allows you from start to finish to be able to analyze a process and see if they followed it right. And if it doesn't end up the way that it should, you can go back and say, okay, where was the hiccup in the process? And you can even analyze the process, or you can analyze the person as a whole. Now, if you're doing a job that's not as virtual, what I would tell you to do is to still use Asana, but instead get out your iPhone and film you doing the work that needs to be done on the outside, right? I think that a lot of people don't realize that an iPhone has a great mic, it has a great look. And so let's say you have a job of changing wheels or changing tires, film yourself doing the entire process, upload that video to YouTube, and then put that video into a project management software. That way, one of the things that you can do with people in your organization is you can turn around and say, okay, I need you to watch this process, and then I need you to get started on this process next week. Again, if it goes well, you know they follow the video. If it doesn't go well, you can then analyze the process, or you can analyze the person. And so that's why I think creating processes is so important, because it allows you to build leverage. Because what I've learned in my business, and I'll tell anybody else who's an entrepreneur, is eventually you get to a point to where you can't do everything. And if you get to that point and you don't have a way to scale or a way to create tasks for other people, you're always going to be the bottleneck of your business. And that means that you'll always have to be in the day to day. And that's not what you want if you want to build something of value for the long term. And so those are the apps that I would tell you to use. If you're doing virtual, use Loom and use Asana. And then if you're doing a training of something physical, be able to use your iPhone and use YouTube and then upload those processes into Asana, because processes allow you to create leverage. Whereas if you don't create processes, you become the bottleneck of your business. I'm just speaking from my own experience, but if you felt like this brought you some value, be sure to share. And as always, if you ever have any questions, feel free to reach out to me at frheart2 on all social medias. And I look forward to watching you make your message known. Have a great day, and God bless.